been doing. So they give us the function. It represents the height in feet of a model rocket x seconds after its launch. Find the maximum height of the rocket, and then find and interpret the axis of symmetry. So we have our equation. And the first thing we need to do is make sure we have a binomial. Do we have a binomial? Yep. So then you see if you could simplify it. So if there's something that we could factor out, is there anything we could factor out? At least two. What do we want to see if we could factor out? What's the number that we're trying to get rid of? The negative 16. So we want to see if we could take 96 and divide it by 16. Yes? Okay. So then we pull out the negative 16. We'd be left with x squared plus, what is it? Oh, sorry. I pulled out a negative though, so it'll become what? Negative 6x, right? And then we will complete the square. So I use b, which is
6.
Close. Negative 6 over, which equals, and then I'll square that, which equals
9.
Okay, so I'd have negative 16 parentheses, x squared minus 6x plus 9. On the other side, what am I really adding to the other side?
Negative 16 times.
Good, the negative 16 times 9, which is
Negative 140.
good. Okay, so then I would use my factors, so it's going to be x what? Factors of factors of 9 that equal
Negative
3, yep. And then I'm going to have two of them, right? So can I just write it as squared?
Yeah.
Okay. Equals this. Since we are finding the maximum height, I should have started with that. We're actually finding the what since it's a parabola? The vertex. Okay, so we're getting into the vertex form. So what needs to be by itself, though, for the vertex form? Y. So how would I get rid of this minus? So I'd do that over here. So then my equation would be y equals negative 16 x minus 3 quantity squared plus 144. So what would my vertex be?
3.
Good, because x's lie, so it'd be 3, 144. Now, what would be the maximum height that the rocket's going to go? It is our y, because y represents our height in feet. So the maximum height it will go is 144. And then it says find and interpret the axis of symmetry. What is the axis of symmetry again?
The x.
It's the x coordinate in the vertex because it's like where you'd be able to fold it over, right? So what would be our axis of symmetry? X equals 3. Good. It says to interpret it though. So what does it mean? What happens? What is the label for x?
Seconds.
Good. So x seconds. So 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, what happens?
After 3 seconds, it reaches its.
It reaches the maximum height, and then what happens? That's where it starts to fall. So at 3 seconds, the rocket is no longer going up. It's going to actually start, it'll be the turning point for it to go down. Okay? So that's how you would interpret the axis of symmetry. Question? Okay. The other one, which I don't think I actually have a good example in the Google class or the thing. It's one of your assignment ones. So open your books because your books are going to be in your assignments in your book anyway. It is number 24.
What page is it up?
Sorry, 511. Number 24. It says some sand art contains sand and water sealed in a glass case, similar to the one shown. When the art is turned upside down, the sand and water fall to create a new picture. The glass case has a depth of 1 centimeter and a volume of 768 cubic centimeters. A says you have to write an equation that represents the volume of the glass case. So, what shape is that? But it's a 3D shape, right? Because it's like a glass case. So it'd be a rectangular prism. And they gave us the volume. How do you find the volume of a rectangular prism? Length times width times height. And what did they say the volume is of that glass case? Yep. So that would be our V equals, do we know the length? What would be our length? X. And then times, what would be our width? I have to read for that part. What's our width? It doesn't say width, it says depth, which the depth would be how wide it is, right? So what's the width?
1 centimeter.
1 times, what's the height?
X minus 8.
So we would multiply these. X times 1, though, is just going to be x. So we really are going to take x times x minus 8. So what would I do with that x? I would distribute. So I would get x squared minus 8x, and that still equals 768, correct? So that is our answer for 24A. Then B says, find the dimensions of the glass case by completing the square. So the first thing is I need a binomial. Do I have a binomial? Okay. So then I take B and divide it by 2. So what's B? Divide it by 2, I would get, and then square that, I would get, perfect. So then I would have x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals, what do I have to make sure I did this side? Add 16. So what would I get? $784. Okay. So then I would factor this. So what would I use?
Negative 4.
Negative 4. And then I'd have this. So what would I do to solve?
Square root both of them.
Square root. Yep. Is it a perfect square by chance? It is? What is it? 28. So I would get the positive and the negative, right? So then I'd add 4 to both sides, correct? So on my negative one, I would get x equals what? Negative 24? Can that work? Can you have a side length of a negative? So we know this one doesn't work. Then this one down here, I would get x equals 32. Now we're not quite done because it wants all the dimensions. So the length is what? 32. How? Because that says x. How am I going to figure out what the height is? Yep. So what is x? What? So I would take 32 and I'd subtract 8, which would give me So the dimensions of that glass case are 32 centimeters by 24 centimeters by you have 1 centimeter depth. Questions on that?